Welcome to our online info session for Ashton College's Immigration Legal Assistant Program. We're happy to have you joining us, whether it's through our Zoom webinar, our live Facebook stream, or our on-demand YouTube video. Welcome to you all. I'm Jake Cressy from Ashton's Marketing and Communications Department. I'm joined today by Rita from the Admissions Department, Rika, who will be working in the background, and of course, our Immigration Legal Assistant Program Instructor, Adila. Adila, how are you?
Good, how are you, Jake?
I'm doing well. I'm excited to get started on this, but before we do, just a few housekeeping rules. We'll be having an open Q&A section near the end of this live stream where you can submit your questions for Adila to answer live. If you're with us on Zoom, you can use the raise hand function, or you can simply type your question into the chat box. If you're on Facebook, you can write your questions in the comments section. We'll be sure to take a look at them there. If you have a very specific question or we don't get around to answering it during this session, you can email us at info@ashtoncollege.ca. You can phone us at 604-891-1249, or you can use the toll-free line at 1-866-759-6006. Now, to start us off, Adila, I understand you have a small presentation prepared for us.
I do. I think Rika was going to share it, so we'll just let her do that.
Excellent.
Sorry, guys, just give me a second here.
No worries.
Are you guys able to see the presentation?
Yes.
Yes.
Perfect. Go ahead. All right, you guys can now proceed.
All right. So tell us a little bit about your experience, your educational background, and what brought you to teaching.
Jake, I am I'm licensed by the Law Society since 2010, and I have a background in immigration law. I've studied immigration law. I also have finished my mediation course, dispute resolution at York University. I pretty much have my firm at Young & Shepherd in Toronto, Ontario, and I specialize in civil litigation, as well as landlord and tenant and refugee law. I started teaching since 2012, so I do have a lot of passion in this field, and that's pretty much it. Yeah.
Excellent. Well, thank you for that. And can you tell us a little bit about sort of the structure of this program, what people can expect to learn during this program?
Right. So this program is quite interesting because it will teach you basically the foundation of law. So I'm going to start off in the program by going over like the Constitution Act, the Canadian Charter of Rights, our common law system, the executive branches and the legislative branches, as well as judicial. We'll discuss the principles of common law and why is it so important to understand the adversarial system as well as the inquisitorial system. So we do quite a bit of discussions in the class in regards to how the Canadian system works before we even proceed to the middle. So this is basically the foundation. And then when we proceed to the next courses, which is basically there's ILAC 1, 2, and 3. When we proceed further down, you get to learn a little bit more about drafting, pleadings, and correspondence, and so forth. So it's quite hands-on, practical, and it engages all of the students to learn how to work in a firm.
Right, that sounds excellent. So who would benefit the most from taking this program?
So an immigration legal assistant, we are focusing on immigration law here. So I will discuss quite a bit of the Immigration and Refugee Protection Act, the regulations, the Immigration Refugee Board. I will discuss the IRCC, CBSA. So all of those things will be part of our discussions. What I find quite interesting actually in my yesterday's class is that I assigned for homework for each student to actually read over a case in regards to a study permit or a work permit and inadmissibility. And every student was able to actually find a case and then in their own words interpret what had occurred, and they found it to be more useful for them than as opposed to reading from a textbook, because they were reading a real story, and it was quite interesting that they enjoyed it so much. Yeah.
Right. So there's a lot of practical experience and a lot of real life examples that'll be used during the program.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Excellent. So would an internationally trained lawyer, somebody who's more familiar with laws from a country that isn't Canada, would they benefit from taking this course?
Absolutely. I do teach, like I said, with the foundation first. So we take it slow. We talk about the Canadian system first, and then slowly you develop and you work your way up in regards to how the Canadian working in a Canadian environment works. So somebody that is, and I've had students that were international lawyers before, and I am able to speak to them in regards to how the common law system works, and they can relate to it because they lived in a country that is common law. So, and then if I speak to them in regards to codification, they lived in a country that used codification, so they understand how those principles all work. So it doesn't matter if you're from a different country. If you've studied law, it just takes a little while to understand the principles in Canada, but the concepts are always the same.
Right. Is there any particular part of Canadian law that you find internationally trained lawyers struggle with the most, or is it all pretty even?
It depends on the person. Yeah.
Fair enough. Now let's talk about the difference between an immigration consultant and an immigration legal assistant. What are the differences?
So an immigration consultant is a licensee that can practice before the Immigration and Refugee Board and also can prepare the cases for a client. Whereas an immigration legal assistant is an individual that will assist in the process of completing those documents. Yeah.
Okay. Now, is there a difference between a legal assistant and a paralegal, or are those interchangeable terms?
Well, it depends on the province. For example, in Ontario, a paralegal is able to practice, and in some the other provinces they're not. So that really does depend on the province. And in some provinces, a paralegal is a legal assistant.
Okay. So another question is, does this program qualify graduates to work as an immigration consultant?
So it does not, but it does offer you an opportunity to learn about how to work for a licensee and how to have the ability to find a job either in a law firm, in courts, government jobs. So you have a lot of options available to you. You get the training necessary to basically learn how to read cases, how to draft cases, how to draft pleadings and whatever that is necessary for a licensee. So it gives you a bit more options in the field if you're looking for a position, but it does not qualify you to become an immigration consultant.
Okay, so if someone were to take this program, complete it, and then some years down the line decide that they want to become an immigration consultant, what steps would they have to take?
Well, it all depends on what the government is going to announce. Right now, there is a review with respect to what is happening with the Queen's College, and due to COVID, it's sort of on hold. So I guess we all have to wait. But a little good news I can tell you is I actually started off as a legal assistant personally. So I worked for a law firm for quite some time, and then decided to go a different route. So that was I started my career as a legal assistant. Yeah.
Right, that's excellent. So you have experience as a legal assistant, as a practitioner, and you can impart that experience onto your students.
Absolutely, yeah.
That's excellent. So could you tell us a little bit more about your teaching style? Are you very hands-on? Tell us a bit.
I am practical. So the only reason I teach is to be practical. I do a lot of hands-on. Well, in this situation, it would be, for example, I would say, this involves this particular issue. The client has committed a criminal offense, is a PR on a PR status. What happens to this person? Find me the section, find me a case that supports it. So I have then the students looking for it. So they really do learn practically, and those are the necessary skills required for a position when you're working at either a firm, a court, or whatever the situation is. You need to know how to perform practically. So my teaching is very much practical.
Excellent. That's good to hear. So what are your expectations of the students who enroll in this course? How much time are they going to spend on assignments and reviewing the material outside of class?
So again, this is individual based. Some students are extremely good at organizing themselves and allotting the right time for the study, allotting the right time for reviewing their work. You just have to manage personal life, work life, and school life. So I would say that if you have a good structural management plan, it depends on you. Sometimes you might need to allot a bit more time. And sometimes not a lot, but remember, if you're listening actively in the class as opposed to just attending class and not having reviewed anything prior to it, you're not going to be learning as much as if you are reviewing it ahead of class and actively listening to the lecture so that you can ask some questions. So do a lot of preparations prior to the class.
Right. And now, is there a lot of interaction during the classes? Is there a chat box function or a discussion forum for in between classes?
There is, yes.
That's excellent. That's good to hear. So let's talk a little bit about the job prospects here. Where do immigration legal assistants work? Where can they find work?
So as I have, it is reflected on the slide, they can find a job at pretty much any law firm. And the best thing about an immigration legal assistant is that you can look at any province. So you're not limited to one province. Any courts, government, banks, any company with a legal department. So let's say, for example, Bell Canada, Rogers, they all have like legal departments, and TD Bank, RBC. So you can always look for a position in those firms as well. So as a legal assistant, and specifically, if required, branch off to getting a position, particularly under immigration. So this certification may actually open up doors to just as getting a position as an immigration as a legal assistant as well. Yeah.
That's excellent. So is there a higher demand for immigration legal assistants versus other areas of law? Is it similar? What's the labor market look like?
Well, COVID is really not helping the process right now. So as soon as, the borders are back to normal and things are a bit better, then I think, people are very busy in immigration, and absolutely it looks really good. Yeah.
Right. And typically when you're working in these positions, is it as part of a team, or are you working just directly under one supervisor? What's the more common setup?
So it depends if you're working for a large company or a smaller company, right?
Okay.
So I worked for a smaller company, and my mentor, a senior lawyer, I worked for 5 years, and he trained me. And it was just my mentor and myself. But if you're working for a bigger company, you are working in a team. You have the accounting department, you have the pleadings department, the intake department, and you have to correspond with everyone. Yeah.
Right. Okay. Now, in terms of, you've been mentioning a few times that different provinces have different rules and regulations. Are there certain provinces where immigration is more in demand, where more people are applying to move to, so that there's a greater demand for legal assistance in that area?
So again, right now, due to COVID, things have changed. So I would say that there's always a demand for legal assistance. If there's a lawyer, there's always or an immigration consultant, there's always a need for a legal assistant. Let's just say that.
Right. So let's say, talking pre-COVID, what were some of the most popular areas in Canada for immigration, even just cities? What are the biggest places that people are moving to?
Well, Toronto, it's over. I think too many. I live in Toronto. There's too many people here. Vancouver, also, yeah, and Ottawa. So the Quebec also, people are there as well. So, but Toronto, I think the most.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so it's a lot of metropolitan areas, not so much in your smaller rural areas?
I believe so, yes.
Okay, excellent. So let's talk about what success looks like in this course. How does a student know that they're doing well, and how can they help themselves succeed?
So I have a lot of personal interactions with the student during the class. So I give them a lot of feedback, especially after group assignments, or if they have individual assignments. So if I am giving you some feedback, that's a great way for you to know, based on my comments, if you're doing well, or if there is anything that you need to improve on. So I work with the student throughout the course so that they're successful at the end. So.
Right, that's excellent. So, and moving back to the industry here, you've talked about some major changes in the recent year, but what have been some of the major changes you've seen during your years working in this industry?
There's definitely, in regards to immigration law in particular.
Yeah, please.
Okay, so there's quite a bit of demand depending on the different programs that's available by the government. So there's always changes with immigration law. It's one of those areas that you will never get bored because the act is the act is always changing, and you'll see that different programs, the governments are publishing different programs, and you're learning new things all the time. So if you're one of those people that like to make sure that you're always learning something new, this is a really good area to be in.
Right. So how can students, after completing this program, keep up with all these changes? What are some of your recommended ways to stay relevant?
So I personally have bookmarks on my personal computer, and I, in the mornings when I wake up, I look at some of these websites to just see what are some changes. But there's also associations that they can join, in which people are just as a membership are informing you, sending you emails about the new developments within the industry. So there's always a way to keep yourself in the loop, and having a good network is always the best case scenario here. Yeah.
Right. And this might be a good place for them to start building that network, obviously, with fellow classmates.
Yes, because those classmates are you never know. It's sometimes you might pick up the phone and you're talking to the other side, and it's one of your classmates. So.
That's great. So, coming back to the industry here, starting out as an entry-level immigration legal assistant, how much can a student expect to make?
So again, it depends on the firm that you work for and the arrangement within that firm, and as well as the province.
Right. But can you give me perhaps a range? What can people expect?
So you have usually a junior assistant, and then usually when you first start, you don't have if you have no experience, you're trying to gain experience to get up to the senior level, and that comes just through working because. As an employer personally, if I'm hiring somebody, I'm going to see your working experience, and it doesn't matter what company you work for. Everybody looks at the employment experience. If you have the senior level, then obviously it would range from somewhere from 50 to sometimes 70.
Right. Okay. Fair enough. So let's talk a little bit more about this career trajectory. You mentioned earlier that becoming an immigration legal assistant offers you a lot of flexibility in terms of work options. Let's explore some of those. What does the career trajectory look like? How many different paths can you go down with this sort of education?
Right. Because we learn about drafting, right? The concepts are the same. Like, for example, one of the things that I start off in ILAC 1 and 2 that I teach is how to write letters, how to write pleadings, and I also discuss a little bit of family law. I discuss a little bit of civil litigation. I discuss a little bit of corporate law. Why do I do this? Because you see the clients that walk in, you also have to take ID from them. You have to, no matter what you do, somehow you're going to need to know some of this information. Like, for example, with the sponsorship, the marital status. So going over family law within Canada, it may become useful in the future, who knows, but we learn the concepts in the courses so that you're equipped to kind of work as a legal assistant. So not specifically, if you like to kind of venture off and look at other options that you have, at least you have the education in terms of the drafting and correspondence courses that is preparing you to work as a legal assistant, maybe in civil litigation or family law or so forth.
Right. And as I understand it, there is a lot of crossover between immigration law and other areas of law. Is that correct?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay, excellent. So I've got a question here from the audience, actually. They ask, I'm about to complete an immigration consultant diploma in another college, but I need to pass the EPE, first entry to practice exam, to perform as an immigration consultant, which takes months. Can I enroll in this certificate and get credits transferred to complete this certificate and work as an immigration legal assistant while waiting to pass the EPE?
So I believe that this is just a legal assistant and it has no connections with, I wouldn't be under the position to answer that question just because of, it's two different jurisdictions, two different areas completely. So they have their own requirements. So whoever that has the requirements set up, you would have to kind of ask them and see what the response is there. But I really don't know, to be honest.
All right, fair enough. I have another question here. Is it possible to work full-time and take this course, and do you record live sessions?
Yes. Some of my students work and they are the 2 hours that they are in the session. It's the 2 hours. It's recorded, so just in case you miss anything, I usually hear kids in the background. That's fine, because most of them are doing it part-time. They have families and things like that, and they're putting themselves on mute and they're listening to the lecture, but they're still interacting. So yeah, it's completely okay.
Right. And well, that raises a question for me is, are most of your students sort of from within the legal industry, or do you get students from radically different professions coming to this program?
So when I first start the course, I asked the same question, do you have any legal background? Just because I would like to know what I'm working, who am I working with, and what they would like to improve on. And my students currently, absolutely no, they don't have a background in law, and but they're learning, they're such great students, they're learning so fast. Yeah.
Excellent. Another question I had regarding your earlier talk about the writing involved in this profession. Do you need to be a proficient writer to be a legal assistant, or can you sort of learn just how to write specifically from a legal assistant perspective?
So you're not born that way. You would have to learn. I didn't know. My typing skills were terrible. It took me a while actually to learn everything. So it takes time, but it's also dependent on how much you're going to work on yourself. So if you're going to take some time, maybe if you have a few minutes on the weekend to work on your typing skills. If you're going to take a few minutes to read over ahead from the chapters and just kind of working on yourself, it's all dependent on the person.
Right, excellent. So I have a question from the audience which asks if attendance will be part of the final marks.
So participation is part of the marks. Usually I like to hear from every student, because it's also for me to know if you're understanding the subjects that I'm discussing. So if I have no one participating and I'm just teaching and then I'm saying bye-bye, it's really not the practical experience that I'm providing to my students. So I actually go down the list to make sure that students are understanding, asking questions, and actively learning within that 2 hours.
Right. Another question here is, do you think this course will be beneficial for someone who's looking to become a student advisor at a university?
So again, the student advisor, that has different credentials, different area completely, but I really I can't comment on that, because I would have to look at the student advisor and see how that may be beneficial, because we're just discussing the immigration legal assistant students.
Right, fair enough. So thinking about the duties of a legal assistant, obviously you need to be familiar with immigration's laws. Is there a lot of memorization that goes into this profession, or is it more about knowing where to find certain things?
Exams are open book. So, even if you go to a lawyer, paralegal immigration consultant, they will tell you that, based on the schooling that they have done, they have completed, their exams were open book, and no one is expecting you to remember the sections, because there's way too many sections to remember. So, and also the legislator would like you to quote it exactly the way it's written, because if you change the meaning and turn it into your own words, you're changing the entire meaning of the section. So yes, it's an open book. You don't need to memorize any of the sections. You just need to make good notes and understand them.
Right. And what are some of the documents and legislation that students will be dealing with in this program and in this profession?
So the first one is, of course, the Constitution Act, the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedom. And then the most important document is the act is the Immigration Refugee Protection Act, and then the regulation. And then we'll turn towards the regulations, the rules for the Immigration Refugee Board. But again, we're taking baby steps. We're taking it very slow. We're building a foundation. And based on my current class, everyone is grasping the lectures pretty well. So I think that's good news.
That's excellent to hear. Now, what do you think students will like the most about this program?
So students right now are enjoying actually the cases that we're going over. Every day I try to introduce a new case, a new story. And so if I'm covering, for example, chapter 5, today I'm doing chapter 5, and I will also cover a case that deals with chapter 5. So we'll do the chapter questions, but we'll talk about a real case that dealt with that similar topic. So it's very practical, and it gives students understand the case more sometimes. If they find it very difficult to understand the way that the book is written, the way that some of the terms are, because there's a lot of, it's like learning a new language. The law is learning a new language. It's the terminology can be very difficult, but it takes time. Yeah.
Right. Okay. So, sorry, I've lost my train of thought here. What would you say are sort of the key differences between working specifically as an immigration legal assistant versus just a legal assistant, rather than, of course, the subject matter?
So in a lot of scenarios, if you build yourself up to a senior legal assistant, immigration legal assistant, you are doing pretty much all of the drafting. So it's some of the things for a bigger firm, some of the things that a lawyer or an immigration consultant will do is they will say, okay, I need you to draft this application. And because you're at the senior level, you already know what needs to be done, and you're preparing it on your own and putting it on the immigration consultant's desk. When I was a legal assistant, I also met with, I had the lawyer meet with the client first, and then I would meet with the client in order to collect information in order to fill out the applications. So I got the opportunity to meet with clients under the supervision of the lawyer, and it was very nice because you get to interact and understand their case a bit better. Yeah.
Right. That brings me to my next question, actually, is what are some of the most rewarding aspects of this profession?
The reason why I do refugee cases is because I look for that smile at the end if it's successful. And it's that I think that changing someone's life to a point where they are getting so relieved that they don't have to fear for persecution anymore. That's really rewarding for me. So this immigration in particular, you're changing people's lives.
Yeah. Right. That's so excellent to hear. Now, we're going to switch over to our administration department, rather admissions department, to answer some questions about the admission requirements for this course. So Rita, if you could come on and guide us through the requirements for this program.
Hello, everyone. Thank you, Jake. My name is Rita. I'm the admissions coordinator for Ashton College. I am in the office between Monday to Friday, 8 a.m. to 4:30 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. I can be reached at 604-891-1249 during those hours, or via email at info@ashtoncollege.ca. To talk a little bit about the prerequisites of the immigration legal assistant certification. The minimum requirement is a minimum of a high school diploma with transcripts, experience with MS Office, to be 19 years of age at the start of the program, and if required, the English language proficiency test. To know if you fall under any of those of that category, please feel free to call me and or email me, and I'll be happy to answer any of your questions. I highly recommend also you visit our policy on admissions. It's all laid out there. It would be found on our website under resources. I want to speak a little bit about the tuition fee and application fee. If you are a domestic student, you're looking at $200 for application fee. As an international student, it's $300. The tuition fee is $3,150 for a domestic student, $4,095 for an international student. And the tuition fee can be done in 3 installments. And textbook fees are approximately $250. We have an intake coming up on March 15th, and it ends on June 5th. The webinars are Monday to Friday from 5:30 p.m. to 7:30 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. We touched on the tuition fee, which is great. I want to address the scholarships, which I believe a lot of people have been asking during this info session. We do not offer a scholarship. However, the program, all formats of the program are eligible for Canada student loans and other government funding, and also bank financing. And I believe JQ and Adila touched on attendance. I'd like to speak on that as well, because we do get a lot of calls regarding that question. Yes, our webinars are recorded. However, your attendance and participation during the webinar hours is mandatory. Again, all of that is found under our policy, but do feel free to call me anytime at 604-891-1249 or email me at info@ashtoncollege.ca if you want to speak directly about your own case. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that, Rita. Before you go, we've had a couple people asking about credit transfers for other programs. Can you speak to that briefly?
We're a private college. Therefore, our credits are not always accepted by other institutions. So the best thing, and the only thing I always tell students, is to please contact the post-secondary institution they're going to be going into after Ashton College to see if our credits are accepted with them.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Now we're about to open the floor to questions from the audience, but before we do, I just have another question for you, Adila. There's a lot of educational paths out here, so why should students choose to take this specific program with Ashton College?
So the best thing, as I stated a little bit earlier, is that we have the one-on-one interaction from the instructors, and if you are looking for improving your skills in the area of law, learning a little bit more, or if, as Jake stated, if you're an international lawyer and you're looking to, for example, just get to know what the Canadian system is like, this is a good course, because we do talk about the Canadian system. We talk about the Constitution, and we talk about, you know, the elements that are required to work in a firm, such as drafting. And so this is an interesting course, because you can like I stated earlier, you can work in any positions afterwards as a legal assistant. So you're not just limited to immigration. So I leave it to your discretion.
Excellent. Thank you for that. With that, the floor is now open for questions. We have Rika managing it on both Zoom here and on the Facebook comments. So feel free to drop a question into the chat box or raise your hand and we can get you there. Rika, do we have any questions at the moment?
Hey guys, no questions from Facebook, just someone telling us that they're very happy to know that the certificate is available. We do have some Q&As from the Zoom Q&A box. I'm going to start at the bottom just to make my way up. Do you think this program will prepare me as an immigration consultant specialized in helping foreign students that want to immigrate permanently to Canada?
So yes, because we talk about the Immigration and Refugee Protection Act, and we talk about, so tonight, for example, I just finished discussing student permits, and we're wrapping up our discussion on work permits. So it does give you information in order to understand how what the requirements are under the IRPA. But in order to actually assist people and work, take on clients, you need to be a lawyer or an immigration consultant.
Excellent. Thanks for that. I guess in a similar vein, someone is or Randeep is asking, what subjects will be taught that is the same as the immigration consultant diploma program?
So Jake, do you want to take that one?
Sure. What crossover is there essentially between the immigration consultant program and this one? Is that the nature of the question?
That sounds like it.
Right. Well, I suppose there are a few topics. And naturally, I've taught neither of these courses, but you're going to be looking at the same legislation, right? So it's going to be your immigration laws that are being discussed. But in terms of job roles and duties, you're going to be looking in this program at supporting an immigration practitioner rather than fulfilling the duties of an immigration practitioner.
Perfect. Looks like that's the questions that we have so far, or some have been answered by Rita in the Q&A box. But just a reminder again to everyone, if you want to raise your hand to speak with us directly, now's your chance. But yeah,
I do see just one more question here in the chat box here. It's asking, how many intakes do you have per year? That might be a question for Rita.
Yes, here I am.
How many intakes?
Answering questions in the background. Lots are coming into Q&A. Yeah. We have 3 to 4 a year intake. So every 3 to 4 months we have one. So as soon as March is done, yes, March, June, early July, you'll see the next one.
Excellent. Thank you for that. Somebody's asking about the availability of entry-level positions. I believe you already talked about this during the session, but it varies from province to province. Is that correct? Is there anything else to be said about that?
That is correct. Yes, Jake.
Excellent. It looks like that's been all the questions answered for now, so we're going to start wrapping the session up. Adila, do you have any final words of advice or thoughts to share with everyone before we end this?
I just see Ken's hand up. So Ken, did you have a question?
Hi, Ken. I've given you mic access, so you just need to unmute yourself and you can have the floor.
Okay. The reason why I listened in here today, I'm in human resources. I've done for 13 years a lot of LMIA applications for SOP workers for temporary foreign low skill. And I was just wondering if this course would deepen my knowledge of just how the immigration works, how IRCC, CBSA, and just how all the how things interconnect. I know that the laws are always changing because I'm involved with it all the time. I don't know if this looks more like, I'm not sure, if it's just half lawyer or more lawyer firm oriented.
So this course will, just to answer the first part of your question, this course will give you the requirements that you need to, the requirements under the IRPA that you need to understand in order to, understand the background in filling out those applications. But keep in mind, I said as earlier, as I stated, in order to, it has to be under a licensee. So either a lawyer or an immigration consultant. So if you cannot take clients on by yourself, because it's only for regulated body, such as an immigration consultant or a lawyer. So you are working under supervision of another licensee. That would be the second part of the question. But this course in particular will give you the training and practical experience necessary to understand how the system works and how to use the regulations and what the requirements are for each one of those applications in order to fill them out. Yeah, I hope I answered your question, Ken.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Okay. Did you have a follow-up? You know what? You can send an email. And they can forward it to me, and we can get in touch, and I can have a discussion with you directly if there's something that I did not answer. Okay.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thanks, Ken. Again, any final words of advice, any thoughts to share before we end this? Nothing? All right. Well, that does it for this info session. If you have any further questions, you can reach out to us by email at info@ashtoncollege.ca. You can phone us at 604-891-1249, or you can use the toll-free number at 1-866-759-6006. Thank you all for joining us, and have a wonderful evening.